Bienvenido a Noche de Pesadillas, cuando el día muere y la oscuridad toma el control. Las pesadillas despiertan para adueñarse de tu mente. Cada susurro trae consigo una historia más terrorífica que la anterior, y cada sombra proyectada por la luna esconde un secreto oscuro que espera ser revelado. Aquí no existen escapatorias ni refugios seguros, solo relatos que penetrarán en tu alma y harán latir tu corazón al ritmo del terror absoluto. Prepárate, porque esta noche tus peores miedos cobrarán vida y te atraparán sin piedad hasta el amanecer. The bass was a physical entity, a tremor vibrating deep within my bones, yet utterly powerless against the frantic bird of panic fluttering against my ribs. Here I stood, adrift in an ocean of unfamiliar faces, a churning kaleidoscope of phosphorescent paint and shimmering glitter under the synthetic pulse of the lights. How had they vanished, my anchors, in the space of a breath? Elysian fields, my inaugural pilgrimage to one of these sprawling three-day bacchanals that consume entire countrysides. Months my friends had spent weaving tales of transcendental bliss, their enthusiasm a relentless tide against my hesitation. "Come on, Ilara," they'd urged, voices bright with promise. It's the kind of memory that defines a lifetime. Some definition this was proving to be. A single errand, water, a simple bottle, had fractured our unity. The crowd, a single organism drawn by the gravitational pull of the headliner's escalating rhythm, had inhaled sharply, surged forward, and exhaled me into isolation. My cries of their names were infinitesimal sparks, swallowed instantly by the sonic boom and the collective roar. As the sun bled towards the horizon, painting the vast festival grounds in strokes of bruised violet and fading gold, dread coiled tight in my gut. The throng, moments ago a thrilling spectacle, now pressed close, an oppressive weight threatening to suffocate. Murmuring apologies, clumsy collisions with slick skin, missteps onto unseen feet. I navigated the dense human current, pushing towards the periphery of the main stage, desperate for elevation, for perspective. Before me stretched a labyrinth of canvas cities, fragrant food altars and satellite stages thrumming with disparate beats. Pennants snapped like restless thoughts in the evening breeze, carrying the mingled scents of scorched oil and sweet cannabis smoke. "Look a bit adrift there," a voice materialized beside me. I pivoted. A man, perhaps early 30s, regarded me with eyes that seemed genuinely kind, his smile disarming. The official festival staff insignia on his shirt was an unexpected beacon, calming the immediate storm within me. "I am." The admission escaped on a rush of relief. "My friends, we were right here." The crowd just swallowed them. He offered a sympathetic nod. "Happens constantly. I'm Silas, by the way. Security detail." "Ilara," I replied, accepting the offered hand. Its grip was firm, reassuring. "Is there any way? Could you help?" "Absolutely," Silas affirmed, his smile broadening. "It's literally the job description. Best bet is the lost and found pavilion. People often leave notes, meeting points, that sort of thing." Grateful, I fell into step behind him, his confident stride parting the sea of bodies with an ease I couldn't fathom. He inquired about my companions, their names, attire, our last known coordinates, his questions almost lost beneath the percussive assault from nearby sound systems. We navigated past glowing art installations pulsing with alien light, past vendors hawking overpriced sustenance, past circles of dancers lost in private ecstasies. Under different stars, perhaps this chaos would have felt enchanting. Now, it was merely overwhelming. Just over this way, Silas indicated, gesturing towards a large canvas structure bearing a faded, lost and found banner. Yet as we drew nearer, a wrongness pricked at my senses. The tent slumped in shadow, devoid of light or personnel. "Are you certain this is the place?" My feet faltered on the trampled grass. Silas's hand closed around my wrist. The warmth vanished, replaced by a sudden, unyielding pressure. "Trust me," he murmured, the easygoing timbre gone, replaced by something flat and hard. "I know precisely where we're headed." Alarm bells, shrill and insistent, detonated in my mind. I tried pulling back, but his grip was a vice. "Let go of me." The demand emerged thin, trembling. He paid no heed, towing me inexorably towards the shadowed entrance. My heels dug uselessly into the soft, forgiving earth. My mouth opened, forming a scream, but his other hand clamped over it, swift and silencing. "Shh," he breathed, his voice a venomous whisper near my ear. "No need for drama, is there?" My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum threatening to burst free. Through the sliver of vision his hand allowed, I saw them. People laughing, dancing, utterly oblivious mere yards away. How? How could no one see? He dragged me inside the tent's oppressive darkness. The festival's roar abruptly muffled, distant. Shapes slowly emerged from the gloom. Stacked boxes hulking against canvas walls. A solitary table. Overturned chairs. "What do you want?" The question was barely audible, stolen by fear. Silas's laugh was a dry, chilling rasp. "Oh, Ilara, such a trusting soul. Pretty thing like you wandering alone in this playground. Count yourself lucky it was me who found you first." The implication struck like ice water down my spine. Escape. Now. Adrenaline surged, overriding paralysis. I brought my foot down, hard onto his, pouring every ounce of weight and terror into the impact. He gasped, a sharp intake of pained surprise, his grip faltering just enough. I wrenched my arm free, spun, and my hand lashed out, a wild, desperate arc connecting with the side of his face. He staggered, less injured than startled. I didn't pause, didn't look back. I flung myself towards the tent flap, propelled by pure animal panic. Bursting into the relative light, I collided solidly with another figure. Strong hands clamped onto my shoulders, arresting my flight. For a sickening instant, I braced for an accomplice, but my gaze flew upwards. Official uniform, crackling radio, a stern face etched with professional concern. "Whoa there, miss. The security guard grounded me. "Everything all right?" Words spilled out, a frantic, jumbled torrent. "Help me, please. That man inside. He said security. He's not. He tried to..." My explanation was severed as Silas emerged from the tent. His expression was unnervingly composed, though fury glittered deep in his eyes. "There you are," he said, his tone returning to that smooth, reasonable pitch. Had me worried, sprinting off like that. The guard's gaze shifted between us, confusion clouding his features. "What's the situation here?" Silas stepped forward, his posture open, non-threatening. "My sincere apologies, officer. My girlfriend here," he gestured towards me, "might have overindulged a little. I was just trying to get her some water, find her a place to sit quietly." Disbelief choked me. He's lying. I've never seen him before. The guard's hand moved towards his radio. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification, please." Silas's transformation was instantaneous. The facade shattered. He shoved the guard hard, sending the man stumbling back off balance. Then he pivoted and plunged into the dense crowd. "Stop him!" I screamed, but he dissolved into the shifting mass of bodies, gone as quickly as he'd appeared. The ensuing hours dissolved into a disorienting haze. More security materialized, followed by uniformed police. Statement after statement, repeating the description, the sequence of events, the chilling slide from feigned kindness to menace. They combed the grounds, but Silas had vanished into the festival's anonymity. As the adrenaline ebbed, profound exhaustion washed in. I sat huddled in a scratchy emergency blanket, nursing lukewarm coffee from a flimsy cup. The ongoing revelry, the music, the laughter, seeming utterly alien, broadcast from another reality. "Ilara!" A beloved voice sliced through the fog. I looked up. Chloe and Ben pushed through the lingering officials, their faces masks of frantic worry. "Oh my God, Ilara! We've been searching everywhere!" Their arms enveloped me, a fierce, grounding embrace, and the dam finally broke. Sobs racked my body, a deluge of terror, relief, and residual adrenaline pouring out onto their familiar shoulders. Later, cocooned within the relative sanctuary of our tent, I recounted the ordeal. They listened, aghast, punctuating the narrative with hugs and fervent assurances that none of it was my fault. "I can't believe we lost sight of you," Chloe murmured, her voice thick with self-reproach. I shook my head, the movement heavy. "It wasn't you, I'm so glad you're here." Sleep was a scarce commodity that night. Every rustle of canvas, every distant shout, sent jolts of fear through me. Shadows seemed to hold the phantom shape of Silas's face. But flanked by my friends, a fragile sense of safety began, tentatively, to return. Dawn painted the sky in tender shades of rose and apricot as the festival's final day began. A decision crystallized within me, hard and clear. I wouldn't allow the darkness of the previous night to eclipse the entire experience. Silas had attempted to steal something vital, my trust, my feeling of security, but I refused to grant him that victory. We emerged from the tent, blinking against the sudden brightness. The festival stirred around us. Early risers flowed through yoga poses on the dew-kissed grass. The aroma of coffee and frying bacon drifted from awakening stalls. My friends watched me, their uncertainty palpable. "Are you positive you want to stay?" Ben asked gently. "We can pack up, go home, no questions asked." I drew a deep breath, surveying the sprawling grounds. Bathed in morning light, it seemed transformed, not the menacing entity of my fear-fueled imagination, but a place intended for music, connection, shared joy. "I'm sure," I said, surprised by the unexpected firmness in my own voice. "But promise me something." "Anything," they responded in unison. A small, fragile smile touched my lips. "Don't let me wander off again." As we walked towards the main stage, the day's first musical notes unfurling into the crisp air, a perceptible weight seemed to lift. What transpired with Silas would forever be a part of my story, a harsh lesson learned. Yet it wouldn't be the entirety of it. I was more than the terror that had almost consumed me. I was Ilara, survivor, friend, lover of the very sounds that filled this field. And in this moment, surrounded by the people I trusted, ready for whatever came next, I was precisely where I needed to be. The festival played on, and so would I. Elias Thorne is my name. 3 weeks have passed since the incident, an interval I must bridge with ink before memory fades, before the echo of her passage, the very shift in the air where she moved, dissolves into mundane recollection. Perhaps inscribed, this account might find credence. Tuesday, 7:30 in the morning's nascent light, found me sequestered at my desk, navigating the digital tide of emails. This early hour, this treasured solitude before the day's clamor commenced, was my ritual. The office breathed silence, punctuated only by the low thrum of ventilation and the rhythmic clatter of my own keystrokes. Then a tremor at the edge of vision. My gaze lifted from the screen. She drifted past my doorway, a figure swathed in deep indigo, a dress of archaic cut, high at the throat, sleeves cinched tight, her hair a dark knot pinned severely back. Antique, yes, like a daguerreotype sprung to life, circa 1890 perhaps. Yet it was the faint nimbus surrounding her, an ethereal phosphorescence at odds with the sterile fluorescent glare, that arrested me. A blink, sharp and deliberate. The corridor stretched vacant before me. A frantic pulse hammered against my ribs. Beads of perspiration sprang forth on my brow. I rose, drawn to the doorway, peering down the length of the hall in both directions. Emptiness greeted me. The familiar tableau of muted carpet, sterile walls, anonymous closed doors. Is anyone there? The question hung brittle in the stillness, my own voice returning faintly. Silence answered. Retreating to my chair, I attempted to reclaim my focus, but my fingers trembled upon the keyboard. Absurd, I chided myself. A tenant from another level, perhaps. An eccentric with a penchant for period attire. Yet the disquiet lingered, a palpable weight in the atmosphere, akin to the barometric plunge preceding a tempest. The subsequent hour unfolded with predictable rhythm. Colleagues arrived, their presence dispersing the quiet with the aroma of brewing coffee, fragments of weekend chatter, the insistent chime of telephones. The spectral image nearly faded into the realm of hallucination, until my monitor stuttered, a momentary glitch, yet enough to snap my attention upward. She occupied the threshold. This time, proximity allowed scrutiny. Youth etched in pallid features, eyes dark and deep, gazing seemingly beyond me, through me. A whisper of movement from her gown, though no sound accompanied it. One hand lifted tentatively, a gesture poised on the cusp of speech. My own hands clamped the chair arms, knuckles blanching. "May I assist you?" The words emerged, strained. Her lips parted, forming silent shapes. Then turning with a fluid grace, she glided away, the indigo fabric swirling noiselessly about her feet. Bolting upright, chair scraping violently, I pursued. Her pace was swift, unerringly leading toward the building's elder heart, the East Wing. We occupy the 4th floor of this edifice, the Bradbury, a relic christened in 1902. While the West Wing succumbed to modernization last year, the East retained its ancestral character, time-worn hardwood, patinated brass. Toward this history, she moved. I pushed through the weighty fire doors demarcating the zones. An abrupt chill permeated the air, a plunge of 10 degrees or more. My breath plumed unseen, an anomaly in the Los Angeles September. She rounded a bend. I hastened my step, sprinting almost, but the corridor beyond the turn revealed only a cul-de-sac. She had vanished, utterly. I stood, lungs aching, confronting the impassive wall. No egress, no alcove, merely solid plaster and lath. My palm flattened against the spot of her disappearance. The wall radiated an unnatural, profound cold. A vibration against my thigh, my phone. The sudden buzz startled me. A message from Amelia. "Meeting in 5, got pastries." I retraced my steps, striving for composure, mastering my ragged breath. The morning conference proceeded conventionally, yet my attention fractured, my gaze repeatedly straying to the doorway, half expecting her return. My coffee cooled, forgotten. Post-meeting, I sought out Silas Blackwood, the building custodian, a man whose tenure spanned 3 decades. Surely if spectral whispers echoed these halls, Silas would know. "Silas," I began, feeling the absurdity of the question. "Forgive me if this sounds outlandish, but has there ever been talk of unusual sightings, particularly in the East Wing?" He peered up from his newspaper puzzle, thick eyebrows arching. "Unusual? Define your terms, Thorne." I recounted the morning's apparitions. As the narrative unfolded, Silas's quizzical demeanor hardened into gravity. He set aside his pen, leaning across the desk. "A fire," he murmured, his voice low. 1906, ignited in the East Wing. Most evacuated, but one young woman. He slid open a deep drawer, extracting a substantial leather-bound ledger, the building's original annals. "A matter of historical curation," he explained, his fingers deftly navigating the brittle, sepia-toned leaves. He stopped. "Here we are. Clara Vance, 24 years of age." His finger traced the elegant, archaic script. "Secretary to the legal firm then housed on this very floor. The contemporary reports state she re-entered the inferno, attempting to retrieve crucial legal papers. Her remains were discovered near the eastern stairwell." A sudden dryness constricted my throat. Her appearance? Silas turned another page, revealing a faded photograph mounted within. My hand resumed its tremor. The image depicted a young woman in a dark, high-necked gown, hair restrained in an austere chignon. Unsmiling, her gaze met the camera lens with unnerving directness. Those eyes, unmistakably the same eyes that had pierced my own mere hours before. Back within the confines of my office, productivity proved elusive. An insistent sensation of being observed prickled my skin. Pockets of intense cold materialized, then dissipated as swiftly as they arrived. My computer became capricious, documents closing spontaneously, the display spasming, the cursor executing phantom maneuvers across the screen. Mid-afternoon around 3, I rose for coffee. Passing the break room, a distinct sound arrested me. Typing. Not the muted tap of modern keyboards, but the sharp, metallic cadence of a manual typewriter. Click-clack, click-clack, the unmistakable impact of type bars on platen. I pushed the door inward, vacant, yet the rhythmic striking persisted for another moment before ceasing utterly. Upon a nearby table lay a single sheet of paper, previously absent. Typed characters, stark and antique in font, formed a plea. The files must be saved. Please help me find them. My fingers, unsteady, closed around the sheet. Tangible enough. Yet as I held it, the letters began to sublimate, dissolving like sympathetic ink until only blank parchment remained. Darkness had long claimed the city when I remained, anchored to my desk by unresolved questions. I delved into the company's digital catacombs, hunting for vestiges of 1906, fragments preserved in the amber of scanned data. Precisely at midnight, my monitor plunged into blackness. Moments later, it flickered back to life, displaying not my previous work, but an unfamiliar directory, inexplicably open. Within resided scanned facsimiles of aged legal papers, uniformly dated 1906. The folder bore the title, Vance Inheritance versus Iron Horse Corporation. Compelled, I began to read. Clara Vance's father, it transpired, had perished in a railway catastrophe the preceding year, 1905. The firm she served represented his estate in a substantial suit against the railway conglomerate, a claim potentially worth fortunes in contemporary currency. The documents alleged the corporation possessed prior knowledge of perilous track conditions, deliberately concealing the truth. Crucial evidence, proving negligence, was scheduled for court presentation the very day after the fatal fire. But the inferno consumed the originals, the very papers Clara had sacrificed her life attempting to safeguard. Lacking the critical proof, the Vance suit had collapsed. The Iron Horse Corporation evaded accountability. A profound chill seeped into my office, deeper than before. Overhead lights pulsed erratically, and then the unmistakable pressure of her nearness directly behind me. I pivoted slowly in my chair. Clara Vance stood before me, her form possessing a newfound solidity, less ephemeral than previous manifestations. Clutched in her hands was an object resembling a barrister's leather portfolio. "You sought to unveil their deceit," I murmured, the words barely audible. "Your death, it was for your father's justice." A slow inclination of her head confirmed it, though her silhouette wavered momentarily, like faulty transmission. "But the proof perished," I countered softly. "Consumed by the flames. Nothing remains to be done." She refuted this with a slight shake of her head, extending a translucent finger toward my monitor. I turned. Files were materializing on the screen, documents I hadn't accessed, scanned reproductions of internal Iron Horse memoranda, maintenance logs, inspection summaries, the very evidence presumed lost forever. Enlightenment dawned. Clara hadn't died retrieving the physical papers. She had perished trying to communicate the location of duplicates, secreted away within these walls for safekeeping. For the ensuing 2 hours, under her silent vigil, I downloaded, compiled, printed. The Iron Horse Corporation, I discovered, persisted, subsumed into a vast modern transport entity currently facing scrutiny from environmental watchdogs. This century-old testament to corporate malfeasance and obfuscation held potent relevance for contemporary litigation. As the last page emerged from the printer, the oppressive cold receded. The ambient temperature normalized. I swiveled once more. Clara lingered near the doorway, transformed. The spectral luminescence had vanished. An aura of tranquility replaced it. A faint smile touched her lips. She offered a single brief nod, and then she was gone. Not faded, simply absent. The following dawn saw encrypted files dispatched to investigative journalists at 3 prominent publications. A fortnight later, the expose detonated across headlines. The transport conglomerate's stock value cratered, shedding nearly 1/3 in a single day's trading. A cascade of class action suits commenced. My early morning arrivals continue. Occasionally, a fleeting coolness brushes the air, or movement flickers at the periphery of my sight. Yet the nature of this subtle haunting has altered. The frisson of Menethai is gone, replaced by something neutral, perhaps even watchful. Sometimes toiling late into the evening, the phantom click-clack of antique keys drifts from the direction of the break room. A gentle nudge I've come to interpret towards cessation and rest. Last week, I relocated my workspace to the East Wing. Silas Blackwood deems me eccentric. Few covet offices in the antiquated section, with its temperamental climate control and protesting floorboards. But a sense of obligation anchors me here. Certain narratives demand resolution, however protracted the delay, even one spanning more than a century. Just this morning, resting upon my otherwise clear desk, lay a sheet of pristine paper. As my eyes rested upon it, faint characters bloomed into existence, then slowly evanesced. Thank you. The typeface, ephemeral as it was, bore the distinct impression of keys long silenced. A disquiet settled over the Dusty Spoon diner that afternoon. A palpable wrongness I sensed the instant my tires crunched onto the vacant gravel lot. Still, famine gnawed deeper than foreboding. 6 relentless hours westward across Nebraska's asphalt spine. Interstate 80 unfurling like a gray ribbon. The dashboard glowed, 2:47 p.m. My gut had been complaining for the last 100 miles. A hollow drumbeat against the engine's drone. Marooned in an ocean of cornstalks, the diner stood solitary. A flickering neon promise, open, sputtered defiance against the vast afternoon sky. Above the door, a tiny bell offered a tinny, startled chime as I entered. The air hung thick, layered with the ghosts of stale coffee and the lingering sigh of ancient grease. Overhead, fluorescent tubes droned their electric mantra, bathing the chipped formica counter, the cracked crimson vinyl of the booths, and the vacant, bolted-down stools in a stark, unforgiving light. "Park yourself anywhere," a voice rasped from the unseen kitchen, punctuated by the sharp hiss of fat meeting hot metal. I chose a stool at the long counter, its vinyl sighing beneath me. My forearms met a faint tackiness on the countertop. Before me lay a menu encased in cloudy plastic, its edges dog-eared by time and countless thumbs. From the swinging kitchen doors emerged the source of the voice. A gaunt man, maybe 50-odd years, adrift in a stained white apron. Wisps of gray hair clung to his scalp. His name tag read, Gus. "Coffee?" he inquired, already hefting a thick ceramic mug. "Please," I managed, my voice raspy from disuse. He poured a stream of liquid, black and viscous as engine oil. The first sip confirmed its brutal honesty. "Hungry?" Gus asked, poised with a notepad. "Cheeseburger, fries." "On it." He vanished back into the heat and sizzle. It was then, amidst the drone of the lights and the distant clang from the kitchen, that a gentle clearing of a throat drew my attention. 2 stools away, where only empty space had been moments before, sat an elderly gentleman. I hadn't registered his arrival. He wore a distinguished tweed jacket, softened leather guarding the elbows, his snowy hair impeccably parted. Wire-rimmed spectacles rested on the bridge of his nose. "Good day," he murmured, offering a slight inclination of his head. His voice carried the warm, rounded vowels of the South. "Afternoon," I returned, surprised by the presence in this pocket of emptiness. "Journeying far?" he inquired gently. "West, San Francisco bound. Seeking fortune or fleeing it?" A slight smile touched his lips. "New position," I admitted, finding myself less guarded than usual. Something in his calm demeanor invited confidence. "Ah, a new chapter. Splendid." His smile broadened. "Traversed that very route myself. Oh, must be 4 decades past. A different world then. Roads quieter, more havens like this one." He indicated our surroundings with a subtle sweep of his hand. The aroma of sizzling beef wafted from the kitchen, triggering another rumble in my gut. "And yourself? Just enjoying the day?" I asked, mainly to fill the silence. "Just meandering. Retirement's gift is time for such things." He chuckled softly. My Eleanor always claimed I had restless feet. A shadow flickered in his eyes. "Eleanor?" I prompted gently. "Gone 5 years now. The cancer," he stated, a simple fact delivered without drama. "My condolences." He offered a slight shrug. "Life unfolds as it must. We shared 42 fine years. No regrets on that score." Gus reappeared, the plate landing with a solid clatter on the counter. Steam curled invitingly from the burger and a mound of golden fries. "Set for now?" Gus asked. "Perfect, thank you." The old gentleman observed me lift the burger. "Gus has a knack for the grill," he remarked. "The fare here is reliably good." The first bite confirmed his assessment. Succulent patty, molten cheese, the bun toasted to a delicate crisp. "Indeed," I mumbled through a mouthful. "Excellent. Try a dash of that red sauce on the fries," he suggested, nodding toward a nearby bottle with a hand-scrawled label. "Gus's own Inferno." As I ate, he spun tales. Decades shaping young minds as a history teacher in Georgia. 3 children flung to different corners of the map. the motorhome that became his vessel after retirement. His narrative flowed easily, laced with wit and quiet wisdom. Slowly, the knots of highway tension in my shoulders began to loosen. "And you are?" he inquired during a lull. "Silas." "Alistair," he returned, extending a hand across the counter. "Though friends favor Al." His grip was surprisingly strong, dry and cool. We spoke further, Alistair recounting hidden gem diners, suggesting detours through landscapes painted by memory, reflecting on the shifting face of heartland America. I polished off the burger and turned to the fries, crisp vessels for Gus's fiery concoction. "How long has this particular ramble lasted?" I asked. Alistair tilted his head, considering. "Nigh on a fortnight, I reckon. Departed Atlanta around the 1st of the month. Quite the journey." But retirement dissolves the calendar." He smiled faintly. "Every day holds the promise of Saturday. No clocks to punch, no destinations demanding arrival." I saw his coffee cup sat empty. "Top you up?" I offered, gesturing toward the pot. "Appreciated, Silas, but no. Time I was moving along." Gus emerged from the kitchen once more, wiping grease from his hands onto his apron. "All satisfactory?" "Very," I confirmed. "Could I settle the bill?" Gus gave me a peculiar look. "Bill for?" "The cheeseburger and fries." "Ah, right." He scribbled on his pad. $12.50. My hand went to my wallet. "And add his coffee to mine," I said, nodding toward Alistair's stool. Gus's brow furrowed. "Whose coffee might that be?" "His." I gestured. The stool was vacant. The space beside me held nothing but air, shimmering under the fluorescent glare. I swept my gaze across the diner. Gus and I were its sole occupants. "Mister," Gus began, his voice low, "you're the only soul who's walked in here this afternoon." The empty mug I'd seen before Alistair, the one I'd offered to refill, wasn't there. The counter beside my plate was clean, wiped smooth. No, that can't be right. There was an older fellow. Alistair, tweed jacket. We were just talking. Gus shook his head, a slow, deliberate motion. "Nobody's been here but you. Been keeping an eye out from the grill line. Saw you come in, saw you sit down. Been just you the whole time." A cold knot formed in my stomach, the satisfying meal suddenly turning to lead. But we spoke for ages, about his wife, Eleanor, his teaching days in Georgia. "Mister, you feeling all right?" Gus's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Maybe sit tight a spell before hitting the road again?" My hands trembled as I fished bills from my wallet, slapping a 15 onto the counter. "Keep it," I mumbled, desperate for air, for escape. The bell overhead gave its frantic little jingle as I shoved the door open. Afternoon sunlight assaulted my eyes, painfully bright after the diner's dim interior. My car stood solitary on the gravel expanse. No other cars, none. Keys slipped through my clumsy fingers, clattering on the stones. I snatched them up, slid behind the wheel, turned the ignition. Pulling back onto the highway, a glance in the rearview mirror showed the dusty spoon shrinking, its neon heartbeat pulsing faintly. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. A damp chill spread across my back despite the warmth. I pushed the car westward, exceeding the speed limit as the endless cornfields blurred into green walls on either side. The sun bled toward the horizon. Had I hallucinated the entire encounter? Was exhaustion playing tricks on my mind? Yet it felt utterly tangible. Alistair's gentle drawl, the cadence of his stories, the way light caught his spectacles, the solid feel of his handshake, and specific details surfaced. Eleanor, gone 5 years, departing Atlanta, the 1st of the month. In the next town, a cluster of buildings huddled around a gas station. I pulled over. Inside, amongst racks of chips and soda, I found a local newspaper. The date printed atop the page, October 15th. With unsteady hands, I tapped my phone's screen, navigating to a search engine. Atlanta obituaries, 5 years ago, October. It took a few tries, refining the search, but then it appeared. An entry dated October 15th, 5 years prior to this very day. Alistair Finch, 72, esteemed educator and cherished family man, passed following a short illness. Retired history teacher. The accompanying photograph showed him clearly. Tweed jacket, leather elbow patches, wire-rimmed glasses framing kind eyes, that neatly combed white hair. The text spoke of his 42-year marriage, his 3 children, his passion for exploring the country. The phone slipped from my nerveless grasp, clattering onto the linoleum floor. Overhead, the gas station's fluorescent lights buzzed, an unnerving echo of the diner. My own reflection stared back from the cooler door. Pale face, eyes wide with disbelief. Outside, twilight had deepened into night, pressing darkness against the windows. I thought of the miles of blacktop ahead, the lonely hours until dawn. Alistair's words returned. Just meandering, just passing through. Back in the car, I let the engine idle for a long time, watching headlights slice through the darkness on the interstate. Finally, I retrieved my phone, dialed the number for the nearest motel, a room for the night. I couldn't face the highway, not now, not while Alistair's voice resonated so clearly in my memory, recounting journeys that had ceased precisely 5 years ago today. Not while the phantom pressure of his handshake lingered, impossibly real, felt across a counter where Gus swore I had sat in solitude. The motel clerk confirmed the booking. Driving the short distance, my eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. The road stretched back, vacant and black, yet a profound sense of unseen company settled upon me. How many other solitary travelers, I wondered, had found unexpected companionship at the Dusty Spoon on quiet afternoons? How many had warmed themselves by the glow of Alistair's stories, oblivious they were conversing with a ghost retracing his final journey? The motel's vacancy sign cast a lurid red bath over the car as I pulled into a parking space. Tomorrow, the westward trek would resume, towards San Francisco, the waiting job, the unwritten future. But tonight demanded stillness. Tonight was for grappling with the impossible logic of the afternoon, for reconciling the memory of a shared meal in the desolate heart of Nebraska with the chilling reality. Tonight was for remembering Alistair Finch, the amiable spectre at the counter, the traveler who was anything but a stranger. This apartment became my unwilling sanctuary a fortnight ago. Its proximity to my daily grind and a less than crippling rent were its chief virtues. The edifice, admittedly time-worn, wore its age beneath a seemingly adequate coat of paint. The lobby presented a facade of passable cleanliness. That initial day dissolved in a haze of cardboard cartons, the anchoring of my sofa, the electronic pulse of the television coming alive. Evening found me steeped in the expected fatigue of relocation, nothing untoward disturbing the settling dust. Midnight ushered in quietude. Beyond my door, the corridor slumbered, dimly lit, the only sound a faint electrical sigh from the exit sign. I secured the lock, extinguished the lights, and surrendered to sleep, without incident. Dawn arrived around 6. Footfalls echoed in the hallway, not loud, yet distinct enough to register. Someone walking. An early riser, heading out, perhaps? Shrugging into my robe, I swung the door inward. Emptiness greeted me. No figure retreating, no lingering presence. My second day. Surely the sound had merely traveled. An acoustic trick of the stairwell or an adjacent unit. I dismissed it. Evening drew me back around 7. Mail collected from the lobby's brass boxes, I ascended the stairs, reaching my landing. My door, second on the right, waited. Overhead, a bulb offered a nervous pulse of light, a detail I barely registered. Inside, the living space remained a landscape of unpacked territories. I carved out a space on the floor for myself and a container of takeout. The television murmured, a backdrop to my attempt at unwinding. Then near 10, the footsteps returned. A measured pacing, back and forth, directly outside my threshold, yet never pausing at neighboring doors. I silenced the TV. The sound persisted a few moments more, then ceased. Rising, I opened the door once more. Corridor lights blazed steadily now. Vacancy. No retreating forms, no closing doors, no whirring elevator cage. An involuntary tremor traced my spine, yet I reasoned, perhaps a neighbor in soft-soled shoes, slipping unseen into the stairwell. I rebolted the door, sank back down, striving to lose myself in the flickering screen. The subsequent days brought the footsteps back, erratic specters of sound. Sometimes at dawn, sometimes swallowed by the deep night. Always that slow, deliberate cadence. Never a glimpse of the walker. I fought to ignore it, constructing flimsy barricades of logic. Work stress manifesting audibly. The eccentric sound dynamics of old ventilation shafts. Friday arrived, and with it, a sliver of desperate curiosity. Home from work, I performed a small ritual. A fool's errand, perhaps, but I affixed a thin strip of adhesive tape low on the exterior door frame, ankle height, a silent sentinel. Would something brush against it? Around 9, the familiar tread began its patrol. I sat shrouded in darkness, my back pressed against the cool wood of the door, listening. A minute passed. Silence fell. Carefully, I eased the door open. The tape remained untouched, perfectly adhered. The hallway light stuttered again, illuminating nothing. A knot tightened in my gut. Retreating inside, I sought solace in music, but its rhythms offered little distraction. The night was spent in uneasy wakefulness, my own pacing mirroring the phantom outside. The weekend saw me wrestling with boxes, attempting to impose order on the chaos, to carve out a sense of belonging. My bed found a new home against the far wall, distanced from the door. A small desk nestled near the window. I craved routine, normalcy. Midday, amidst the clatter of organizing the bathroom cabinet, a different sound intruded. A soft thump against the hallway wall. Not footsteps, but a distinct impact. I froze, breath caught, heart accelerating. A clammy dampness bloomed on my palms. Toilet brush still in hand, I crept from the bathroom into the living area. Silence. A wave of absurdity washed over me, standing there armed with cleaning supplies, yet the tremor in my chest felt undeniably real. Slow, deliberate breaths failed to fully calm the internal storm. Steeling myself, I ventured into the corridor again. Still empty. The building hummed faintly, impersonally. Back inside, the deadbolt slid home with a definitive click. Concentration became an elusive quarry thereafter. That night demanded vigilance. I extinguished all illumination save for a single low lamp, casting long shadows across the living room. Notebook poised, I sat on the sofa, an unwilling chronicler of the unseen. Near midnight, a faint scraping noise drifted from the floor above, perhaps furniture being rearranged. Then the footsteps, closer this time, seemingly millimeters from my door. I leaned in, straining to pinpoint their trajectory, left to right, traversing my threshold. My pulse hammered against my eardrums. Footsteps, 12:03 a.m. I scribbled. A sudden short creak followed, sharp as a snapped twig, suggestive of a hinge yielding. My mouth turned to dust. I flung the door open, a desperate bid to confront the source. Nothing. The flickering light danced alone in the empty expanse. My gaze swept the neighboring doors, all shut tight. Swallowing hard against the dryness, I walked towards the staircase, peered down into its descending gloom. Empty. My arms began to shake. Returning to my door, I locked it, the mechanism sounding unnaturally loud in the charged silence. My nerves frayed further. The following day, seeking solidarity, I intercepted a neighbor near the mailboxes, a middle-aged woman juggling grocery bags. After introducing myself, I tentatively inquired about strange nocturnal sounds. She tilted her head, a picture of placid unawareness. The usual creaks of an old structure, nothing more. I mentioned the pacing footsteps, a shrug. "It's an old building," she offered with finality, before wishing me well and departing. The brief exchange amplified my sense of isolation. Were these truly just phantom noises, amplified by my own anxieties? Yet the consistency, the human-like rhythm, logic offered no sanctuary. Monday evening, post-work, brought a new strategy: surveillance. Waiting until the corridor was deserted, I positioned my phone on a small, inconspicuous table near my door, its lens aimed down the hallway, recording active. Inside, I let the television provide a low murmur, hoping the phone's microphone would capture any anomaly. An hour later, I retrieved the device. Battery diminished, recording complete. Playback commenced. 40 minutes in, faint footsteps materialized on the audio track. I leaned closer, amplifying the sound. The video showed only the empty, sterile corridor. But the sound was undeniably there, that distinct tread. Then precisely when the source should have traversed the camera's view, nothing. No figure, no shadow, no disturbance in the air. Just the vacant hallway and the disembodied sound. My throat constricted. I watched, mesmerized, as the footsteps abruptly ceased, leaving the visual silence undisturbed. A cold pressure settled in my chest. I saved the recording, unable to immediately face watching it again, the digital ghost more unsettling than its absence. That night I courted sleep early. Phone silenced, curtains drawn tight, earplugs inserted, Around 2 a.m., a jolt threw me from slumber, heart hammering against my ribs. One earplug lay beside me on the pillow, and I heard it clearly. A new sound originating inside the apartment. A chair scraping across the wooden floor in the living room. My mouth went instantly dry. Rising, I flicked on the bedside lamp, its sudden glare harsh. I stood motionless, straining to hear more. Silence descended, thick and watchful. Then a faint rustling, like fabric shifting, emanating from the direction of my sofa. My hands trembled violently. Seizing the nearest heavy object, a cheap metal floor lamp, I advanced cautiously into the living area. The sofa sat empty. The chair remained precisely where I'd left it. Nothing appeared disturbed. The television screen was dark. The front door remained securely locked. My own breathing sounded ragged, shallow in the tense quiet. Every light in the apartment blazed to life under my command. I searched closets, peered behind furniture, even flung open kitchen cabinets. Nothing. No intruder. No sign of forced entry. Calling the authorities felt futile. What could I report? An errant noise? A feeling? I remained awake until the first hints of dawn painted the windows gray, bathed in artificial light. Work the next day was a fog of exhaustion. Productivity plummeted, concentration shattered. The night's events looped relentlessly in my mind, a puzzle defying rational assembly. Returning home that evening, I was consumed by a need for answers. I became an investigator in my own space, tapping walls, listening for hollow spaces, checking vents, searching for any acoustic anomaly. Everything felt solid, mundane. I switched off the air conditioning, plunging the apartment into near silence. Around 9, the quiet was breached. Faint movement, but not from the corridor this time. It whispered from within my bedroom. I surged towards it. The door was closed, the room within dark as I'd left it. I threw the door open, simultaneously hitting the light switch. Nothing. The bed neatly made. The desk undisturbed. The closet door firmly shut. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Under the bed, empty. I pulled open the closet. Just clothes, hanging limply, and a few storage boxes. No hint of disturbance. Backing out of the room, into the hallway, a sudden, distinct coolness brushed past my legs. A draft where no draft should be. No window stood open. I stood paralyzed, scanning the air, seeing nothing but motes dancing in the light. Gooseflesh prickled my arms. The following morning found me in the building manager's cramped office on the ground floor. I voiced my concerns. The noises, the footsteps. Could faulty plumbing or antiquated ventilation be the culprit? He shook his head, affable but dismissive. Everything was operational. The previous tenant? Never a complaint. His gaze held a hint of pity, perhaps suspicion. I inquired about the hallway security cameras. Glitchy, he admitted, prone to intermittent failures, but no recordings showed unauthorized individuals. I left his office feeling more adrift than ever. My experiences invalidated. My sanity implicitly questioned. The sounds, the video, the chilling draft. They felt terrifyingly real, yet existed in a vacuum of shared experience. That night, the footsteps returned near midnight, resuming their relentless patrol. Back and forth, for at least 2 minutes. I timed it on my phone, the glowing digits marking the duration of my dread. My mouth was parched, the rush of blood loud in my ears. I remained in bed, coiled with tension, unwilling to open the door again, hoping ignorance might starve the phenomenon. Eventually, the pacing ceased, but then a new torment began. Faint tapping. Knuckles, it sounded like, rapping softly against drywall in a slow, deliberate rhythm. My legs felt leaden. I sat bolt upright, listening intently. The tapping migrated, shifting to the living room wall. My fists clenched, breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Then impossibly, it moved to the wall directly behind my headboard. A strangled cry escaped me. I scrambled out of bed, snatching my phone, and stood trembling in the center of the room. The tapping stopped. My hands shook so violently the phone nearly slipped from my grasp. The darkness felt suffocating, the silence predatory. I couldn't endure another moment alone in that space. Throwing essentials into a backpack, I fled the apartment, seeking refuge in the anonymous sanctuary of a cheap motel. Morning brought retreat, but also a surge of frustrated defiance. Embarrassment warred with anger. This was my home, rented and paid for. I refused to be driven out by inexplicable occurrences without understanding why. A direct confrontation felt necessary. I positioned a small camera in the living room, its lens trained on the bedroom door. Then, leaving every light blazing, I settled onto the sofa to wait, determined to capture evidence from within. Hours crawled by in tense silence. Around 1 a.m., my phone chimed, a motion alert from the camera. I jolted awake from a half-doze, instantly focused on the live feed. The bedroom door stood open. My stomach plummeted. I knew I had left it shut. Yet glancing towards the actual door from my position on the sofa, it remained visibly closed. The screen offered a reality divergent from my own senses. A bizarre distortion flickered across the video image, like electronic interference. My breathing grew rapid, shallow. Pins and needles prickled my hands. Then on the feed, the spectral door began to slowly swing shut. In the physical space of my living room, the real door hadn't budged. It remained closed. Seconds later, the feed cleared. The distortion vanished, showing the door as closed once more. Disorientation washed over me. I rose, walked to the bedroom door, grasped the handle. It turned easily. The door swung open without resistance. No physical explanation accounted for the camera's phantom vision. Rewinding the footage confirmed it. 10 seconds of the door impossibly open, then closing of its own accord. My legs felt unsteady beneath me. A painful throbbing began in my temples. My chest tightened, restricting breath. Ignoring this was no longer an option. These events weren't fading, they were escalating. Moving felt like surrender, yet my finances offered little flexibility. And beneath the fear, a stubborn need for answers persisted, a refusal to accept the irrational without a fight. The remainder of the night passed under the glare of every bulb, sleep a distant shore. I compulsively checked the camera feed, but the digital eye revealed nothing further. The next day, another brief encounter in the hallway. A man I recognized from a few doors down, pulling a small suitcase. My now familiar, hesitant question: had he experienced anything unusual at night? A head shake, a declaration of normalcy. He cast a peculiar glance my way as I haltingly described the footsteps, before murmuring something about a business trip and disappearing down the stairs. I lingered alone in the corridor, gaze fixed on the stuttering overhead light. The building felt unnervingly silent, pregnant with secrets. Returning to my apartment, the click of the lock felt less like security, more like sealing myself inside a cage. 2 weeks. That's how long I've inhabited this space. The footsteps remain intermittent visitors. The tapping occasionally resumes its unnerving dialogue with the walls. Sometimes shadows writhe peripherally in the hallway, vanishing when directly observed. Rational explanations, tricks of light, faulty wiring, overwrought nerves grow increasingly threadbare with each new incident. My heart leaps now at every flicker of the corridor light, bracing for a glimpse of something. I meticulously review my camera recordings, digital evidence of the inexplicable, but share them with no one. Who would believe me? The line between perceived reality and delusion feels perilously thin. Yet the sounds, the sights, the visceral fear, they anchor me to this disturbing certainty. Every lock is checked, rechecked. My phone stays charged, always ready. A pervasive sense of being watched, an unseen presence lurking just beyond the veil of the ordinary, clings to me within these walls. I remain because escape feels premature, financially unfeasible, and intellectually unsatisfying. I need proof, concrete evidence, before I sever ties with this place. More cameras, more recordings, that's the plan. Each occurrence leaves its physical mark. The racing pulse, the damp palms, the weary ache behind sleep-deprived eyes. A heavy weight of dread resides permanently in my stomach, but I cannot leave until I understand. So I wait, hyper-alert, for the next soft footfall, the next inexplicable sign that I am not alone here. Waiting, wondering what comes next, questioning everything I thought I knew to be true. The first violation appeared etched into the ancient sentinel guarding the path to my borrowed sanctuary. A raw gouge against the weathered oak bark. An errant claw, perhaps, belonging to some lumbering beast of the deep woods. So I reasoned, dismissing the unease prickling beneath my skin. But the marks, they proliferated. They spread like a creeping blight from trunk to trunk, whispering of something far more deliberate, more patient, lurking within the shadowed heart of the forest. I had sought refuge here, in this secluded cabin, trading the city's cacophony for the hushed reverence of the wild. A necessary exile. The agent who'd handed over the keys had painted the isolation in strokes of pure bliss, miles separating me from any other soul. A perfect canvas for the tranquility I desperately sought. And for a handful of days, peace was mine. Dawn arrived on wings of birdsong. Mornings were spent weaving words on the sun-drenched porch. Afternoons dissolved into long, meandering walks, absorbing the forest's deep, untroubled sighs. It was during one such pilgrimage that the first true anomaly snagged my attention. Not a random scratch, but a clean, deep incision slicing through the bark of a colossal oak. Too precise, too purposeful. My fingertips traced the wound, still weeping sap. A tremor traced my spine, swift and cold, but I forced it down. A hiker's trail marker, nothing more. I lied to myself, turning away. The following dawn revealed more. 3 parallel scars now marred the pale flesh of a birch near the cabin steps. I stood, morning coffee cooling in my grasp, transfixed. They hadn't existed yesterday. An unshakable certainty settled in my gut. The cuts were methodical, starkly intentional. No creature of instinct wrought this. A call to the ranger station yielded only hollow reassurance. I described the geometric wounds, inquired about disturbances. Ranger Croft, his voice crackling with bored amusement, offered platitudes. Likely youngsters raising Cain, he drawled. Wouldn't lose sleep over it, miss. But sleep became a fugitive. Worry coiled tight in my chest, a certainty that the wood's equilibrium was profoundly disturbed. That evening, rituals of security became paramount. Bolts slid home, latches clicked, every window pane reflecting my own anxious face. The cabin, old and resonant, groaned around me, each settling timber a potential footfall, jolting me from the precipice of slumber. Morning light brought fresh horror, more sigils. They now flanked the winding path to where my car sat parked, a silent waiting promise of escape. 5 trees, each branded with the same tripartite slash. My hands trembled, capturing the evidence with my phone, the dew-soaked grass chilling my bare feet through thin slippers. The day bled away in futile research, a frantic scrabble for logic. Every hypothesis, vandalism, territorial markings, esoteric rituals, felt inadequate, crumbling against the sheer methodical speed, the chilling pattern of their appearance. As twilight began to bleed long, skeletal shadows across the forest floor, I heard it. A grating rasp, metal dragged against wood, emanating from just beyond the dense tree line. I froze, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. The sound repeated, closer, more deliberate. A surge of adrenaline propelled me back towards the cabin. The door slammed, bolts shooting home in a cacophony of panicked clicks. Breath tearing at my lungs, I pressed my face to the cool glass of a window, scanning the deepening gloom. Nothing stirred but the languid sway of branches caught in the evening's sigh. Sleep was an impossibility. I kept vigil in the main room, bathed in artificial light, a heavy kitchen knife clutched in a white-knuckled grip. Every nocturnal whisper of the house sent shivers down my spine. My gaze darted compulsively towards the dark panes, half expecting a face to materialize from the blackness. Dawn broke pale and hesitant, offering a fragile truce. I had survived the night, but stepping onto the porch, the fragile relief shattered, replaced by a glacial dread. As far as my eye could reach, every visible tree bore the mark. 3 parallel lines repeated dozens, perhaps hundreds of times, forming an undeniable, chilling perimeter around my refuge. My phone was already dialing 911 before conscious thought caught up. Fingers clumsy, voice a torrent of fractured panic poured into the dispatcher's ear. She spoke soothingly, promising assistance, yet skepticism bled through the professional calm. The ensuing wait stretched into an eternity. Each tick of the clock amplified, my nerves frayed, eyes perpetually drawn to the windows, to the silent, watching trees. When the knock finally sounded sharp and sudden, a strangled cry escaped my lips. "Ma'am, Deputy Thorne, everything all right in there?" Fumbling with the locks, a wave of dizzying relief washed over me at the sight of the uniform. But as I spilled my story, gesturing wildly, thrusting the phone with its damning photos towards him, I saw the familiar shadow of disbelief cloud his features. "Look," he began, his tone gentle, condescending. It gets awful quiet out here. Mine can play tricks. Why don't you pack a bag, come into town for the night, get your bearings? A silent scream built in my throat. He didn't see. He wouldn't see. To him, I was merely another city transplant unraveling under the weight of solitude. Defeated, I nodded numbly, agreeing to follow his cruiser, while I threw essentials into an overnight bag. I heard Thorne's low murmur into his radio from the porch. Yeah, false alarm, looks like. Just a bit spooked. Needs a change of scenery. Bitterness mingled with the fear, hot and sharp. I knew what I had witnessed. This wasn't some phantom conjured by isolation. The drive into town was a blur of strained small talk I barely registered. My thoughts remained tethered to the cabin, to the woods, wondering what fresh violations awaited my return. The motel room was sterile, anonymous, a stark contrast to the cabin's rustic embrace. Yet the proximity of other lives offered a thin blanket of security. I tried to lose myself in the small town's mundane rhythm, but the forest's presence lingered, a dark undercurrent beneath the surface of the day. Night fell, and I sat on the thin motel mattress, scrolling through the images on my phone. The marks stared back, stark and undeniable. Real. Whatever Thorne or Croft believed, this was happening. Then a notification blinked. A new email. Spam, most likely. I tapped it open. My blood turned to ice water. The message contained a single attachment. A photograph. It was me, standing on the cabin porch just that morning, face tilted up towards Deputy Thorne. The perspective was from the tree line, the photographer nestled deep within the shadows. Below the image, a simple line of text. Why did you flee? My tapestry displeases you. The phone nearly slipped from my violently shaking hands. They had been there, watching. Even as the deputy offered his placating words, they observed, unseen. Primal instinct screamed, run, drive, never look back. But a stubborn ember of defiance ignited amidst the terror. This place, this solitude, was meant to be my restoration. I wouldn't be hunted from it. My fingers, still trembling, typed a reply. Identify yourself. What is your purpose? The answer was almost instantaneous. Return to the threshold. Understanding awaits. Every rational thought urged caution, retreat, another call to dismissive authorities. But a chilling certainty settled over me. This wouldn't end with distance. The presence, whatever it was, felt tethered to me now. The only path forward lay back through the fear. I drove towards the cabin as dawn painted the sky in bruised pastels, the morning mist clinging to the trees, lending the forest an ethereal, unsettling beauty. The carved sigils on the trees seemed almost to pulse in the oblique light. A breadcrumb trail, leading me back into the heart of the enigma. Pulling up the gravel drive, I saw her. A figure standing sentinel on the porch, silhouetted against the nascent light. Tall, draped in dark, practical clothing, face lost in shadow. My heart hammered against my ribs as I cut the engine and stepped out, my right hand closing tight around the pepper spray canister in my pocket. Who are you? My voice surprisingly held steady. The figure moved, stepping into the weak sunlight. I inhaled sharply. A woman, aged but wiry, perhaps in her 60s, with a cascade of untamed silver hair and eyes the startling blue of glacial ice. A smile touched her lips but failed to warm her gaze. "Welcome home, Ilara," she rasped, her voice like dry leaves skittering over stone. "I've been expecting you." "The marks," I stated, keeping my distance. "You did this?" She nodded, her weathered hand stroking one of the scarred trees beside the porch rail. "Aren't they eloquent? It's our dialogue. The forest speaks through these carvings, through me." A cold dread seeped into my bones. This woman radiated an unnerving intensity, a conviction that bordered on delusion, yet felt utterly, dangerously real. Why? What is the point of this? Her piercing eyes snapped to mine, suddenly sharp, predatory. "Because you trespass. This is my domain, my sanctuary. You arrive, an interloper, drawing sustenance from its quietude without understanding, without belonging." She took a deliberate step towards me. I instinctively retreated. "But do not fret," she continued, her tone softening into something even more disturbing, conspiratorial. "I will help you integrate, become one with the woods, as I have." That's when I saw them. Her forearms, pushed clear of her sleeves, bore scars, pale raised lines, 3 running parallel from wrist towards elbow. The same pattern. Bile rose in my throat. "You're deranged," I whispered, fumbling behind me for the car door handle. She lunged with startling agility, her hand flashing out. Not nails. Affixed to her fingertips were crude, sharpened metal claws that glinted wickedly. They raked across my forearm. I cried out, less from pain than sheer visceral shock, stumbling backward. Survival instinct surged, eclipsing thought. I raised the pepper spray and fired directly into her face. A guttural howl of pain and fury erupted from her. Blinded and choking, she staggered back. Seizing the moment, I scrambled into the car, keys jamming frantically into the ignition. The engine roared to life. As I slammed the car into reverse and spun gravel, my rearview mirror captured her image. Standing defiant in the center of the path, arms outstretched to the trees, a wild priestess abandoned by her god. Even above the engine's whine, I could hear her shriek carried on the wind. "You cannot escape. The woods will reclaim you." I drove, fueled by adrenaline, not daring to stop until state lines blurred behind me. Only then, 3 states away, did I allow myself the luxury of a shuddering breath. I never went back. Later, fragmented reports filtered through official channels. Silva, a former ranger consumed by the wilderness she once protected, lost years ago to a profound break from reality. Living feral, convinced she was the forest's guardian spirit. Sometimes, in the dead quiet of night, the phantom sound of metal scraping wood echoes in my mind. And sometimes, when the city's relentless pulse feels suffocating, a strange magnetic pull tugs me towards the memory of deep green silence. But then my gaze falls upon the faint pale scars that cross my arm. 3 parallel lines. And I remember. I remember why the forest's embrace is a solace I can never seek again. The ghost of fried potatoes haunted my uniform, a greasy specter clinging long after closing. 3 hours past midnight, inventory finally conquered. I coaxed the key into the lock, my fingers jittery with fatigue. Only the thought of Reese, waiting for his graveyard shift sustenance at the station, propelled my aching legs forward. Before me lay the vast, vacant expanse of the parking lot, a stage lit by sputtering street lamps that painted the fractured asphalt with nervous, elongated shadows. Managing the place meant these solitary late departures were routine. Yet tonight felt different. The air hung thick, charged with a static hum that prickled the skin on my arms. I hugged the paper sack, leftover golden chicken, crisp fries, like a shield against the encroaching dark as I navigated towards my car. Each footfall ricocheted off the silent brick facades, an unnerving counterpoint to my own heartbeat, amplifying the emptiness. A walk traversed countless times. Tonight it seemed a desolate pilgrimage across an endless plain. Reese's station, a mere 10-minute drive, awaited. He always protested the deliveries. "Ilara, don't trouble yourself." But the gratitude in his eyes when presented with something warmer than vending machine fare was reward enough. And truth be told, it was my fragile excuse to steal a few moments with him in the dead of night. The car remote chirped, a piercing sound in the stillness. I tumbled into the driver's seat, the click of the locks echoing the release of a breath I hadn't known I was holding captive. Vanilla air freshener, a familiar, sweet anchor, did little to dispel the unease as I placed the cooling meal on the passenger seat. At the police station, the lot was a slumbering field of patrol cars, silent metal beasts huddled under the sodium glow. I found a spot near the entrance, thumbed a quick text to Reese, "Here," and prepared to wait. He couldn't always materialize instantly, duty sometimes intervening. My phone screen became a small portal. A distraction scrolled through with absent focus. Then a flicker at the edge of sight. Through the passenger window, a shape detached itself from the deep gloom between cruisers. My first thought, Reese. But the silhouette was wrong. Squatter, wider, moving with a lurching rhythm that wasn't his measured stride. A cold fist clenched in my chest. Definitely not Reese. Closer now, the figure resolved into an unfamiliar man, swaddled in a stained hooded sweatshirt. He advanced, trajectory aimed squarely at my car, his face obscured by shadow and intention. My thumb jabbed the lock button again, a futile reinforcement of already secured doors. He was near enough now. I could see his face, or rather, the alarming vacancy in his eyes. Wide, unseeing, fixed on something beyond me, his expression churned my stomach into knots. Without preamble, he lunged, slamming both palms flat against the passenger window. The impact shuddered through the car's frame, jolting me so hard my phone slipped, vanishing into the chasm between the seats. Then came the screaming, a raw, incoherent torrent muffled by the glass. Yet the fury behind it was terrifyingly clear. My hands, suddenly disconnected from my will, trembled too violently to grasp the key fob properly. He began hammering the window, a brutal, rhythmic assault, each blow harder than the last. Fragments of his rant pierced the barrier. Nonsensical phrases about transmissions, about them coming. A sickening web of cracks bloomed across the glass. My heart hammered against my ribs, threatening to burst as my clumsy fingers finally found purchase, turning the ignition. The engine roared to life, a sudden intrusion of mechanical power, just as the man stooped, snatching a jagged piece of concrete from the pavement. I slammed the gear shift into reverse. He reared back and hurled the makeshift missile. It struck the windshield directly in my line of sight with a sickening thwack, starring the glass in a blinding constellation of fracture. Thought evaporated. Instinct took over. Foot mashed the accelerator, tires screaming protest as I shot backward, away from the frenzied figure. Through the shattered glass, I saw the station's front doors fly open. Reese. Another officer beside him. Uniforms flashed under the streetlights as they sprinted towards the unfolding chaos. The man spun to face them, still bellowing about signals, his hands flung high in surrender or supplication. Tremors racked my body as Reese reached the car, his face a taut mask of professional calm, overlaying deep concern. He wrenched my door open, his hand steadying me as I stumbled out, while his partner managed the assailant, who had collapsed onto the asphalt, rocking and muttering into the night. "Ilara, you all right?" Reese's voice was low, controlled, but the undercurrent of fear was unmistakable. I could only nod, words lost somewhere in the adrenaline surge. He pulled me into a fierce embrace, his own heart thundering against mine. Later, cocooned within the station's fluorescent hum, the story pieced itself together. The man, gripped by a severe mental health episode, had been reported earlier, exhibiting erratic behavior. They'd been searching for him, hoping to intervene, but he'd vanished before they could connect. Reese relayed this quietly, his hand enveloping mine across a worn break-room table where the bag of now frigid chicken and fries sat, utterly forgotten. The entire ordeal, likely less than 5 minutes start to finish, felt stretched into an eternity. My car bore the scars, a shattered passenger window, a cratered windshield, but I was intact. "That's what matters," Reese repeated, a mantra against the lingering shock. I remained at the station until the first hints of dawn bled into the sky, the thought of navigating home alone in my wounded car unbearable. Reese plied me with endless cups of notoriously bad station coffee, our conversation drifting over safe, shallow topics, carefully skirting the raw edges of the night's events. As the sun finally asserted itself, he drove me home, his cruiser a reassuring presence behind the tow truck, hauling my vehicle away. That evening I called in a marker, arranging for someone else to lock up the restaurant. The image of that empty lot, the vulnerability of being isolated in my car after dark, it was too potent, too fresh. Reese offered without hesitation to be my escort after every late shift until the fear subsided. It felt like surrender, but I accepted, clinging to the offered security. A week passed. My car returned, gleaming and whole once more. The restaurant owner, prompted by the incident, installed brighter, broader security lights across the parking lot. Reese helped me install a dash cam, small fortifications, tangible measures against an intangible dread, gestures that couldn't erase the memory but offered a fragile sense of reclaimed control. I still ferry late-night meals to Reese, but now I wait. engine running, eyes fixed on the station door, until I see his familiar form emerge before venturing out. Some might label it paranoia. I prefer to call it vigilance. In the quiet theater of the night, you never truly know who might step out from the wings. A flicker in the rear-view glass, eyes sharp and knowing, and the cold certainty bloomed. A catastrophic error had been made, irrevocable now. The stranger occupied the seat beside me, a phantom conjured by my own weary hand, and the car devoured the miles on a desolate ribbon of asphalt, plunging us deeper into the longest, blackest night of my existence. It had unspooled like any other travel day. Homeward bound after business concluded, a 6-hour trajectory etched into memory by repetition. Rain, a ceaseless vertical torrent since the city limits fell away, assaulted the windshield, blurring the world into impressionistic streaks of light and shadow. Fatigue gnawed, a deep-seated ache that set the eyes burning and frayed the edges of thought. A sign materialized, spectral in the downpour. Next services, 50 miles. And then, him. A solitary silhouette against the weeping roadside, thumb raised in stark appeal. Saturated. My headlamp snatched a fleeting inventory. Battered pack, a face etched with a weariness that mirrored my own. Never before had I courted the roadside gamble of a hitchhiker. Every instinct, every parental warning screamed against it. Yet the sheer misery of the tableau, the relentless sky, the isolated figure, slowed my momentum. Perhaps exhaustion had eroded judgment's dam. Or maybe some ill-conceived notion of cosmic balance tipped the scale. Regardless, the car sighed onto the shoulder's gravel. He trotted towards the passenger door, a quick, urgent movement through the deluge. I leaned across, wrestled the latch. Destination? My voice strained against the percussive drumming on the roof. Just need to get further on, he offered, folding himself into the car, bringing the scent of rain and damp earth with him. Obliged for the lift, friend. Vicious weather. As he settled, the dim interior light granted a clearer view. Younger than presumed, late 20s, perhaps. Garments plastered to his frame, dark hair slicked across his forehead. But the eyes, they arrested attention. A pale, crystalline blue, unnervingly alert, utterly incongruous with his drenched state. I'm Elias, I volunteered, easing the car back into the highway's current. Town ahead, 50 miles or so. That work for you? He inclined his head, the faintest ghost of a smile touching his lips. Perfectly Elias. The name's Silas. Silence descended then, thick and palpable, punctuated only by the hypnotic sweep of the wipers and the engine's steady drone. Peripheral glances caught Silas immobile, gaze fixed on the unfolding road, that phantom smile unwavering. So, I ventured, the quiet amplifying discomfort. What is you out walking in this? Silas turned his head, and a current, colder than the rain, traced my spine. Something had shifted in his stare, a glacial quality absent moments before. My hands tightened instinctively on the wheel. Oh, you know. His voice was a low, smooth murmur. Just trying to reach my destination. and non-answer. I nodded, adrift. The ensuing silence felt heavier, charged with unspoken things. My hand drifted towards the radio, seeking refuge in noise. Silas's hand shot out, clamping onto my wrist. His grip was startling, inflexible as forged metal. "I wouldn't, Elias," he cautioned, his tone soft, yet absolute. "You and we need a little conversation." My pulse leapt, a frantic bird against my ribs. I tugged futilely against his hold. "What is this?" The words fractured. "Let me go." "Keep driving," Silas commanded, the instructions steel-edged. "And pay close attention." Obedience felt like the only option. My thoughts a chaotic storm. How had this happened? What could he possibly want? "You're likely wondering about the why of this," Silas murmured, seemingly plucking the question from my mind. "Truth is, Elias, you weren't the first Samaritan tonight. You might just be the last, though." A slick, cold perspiration beaded on my forehead. "What are you saying?" The question felt dangerous, the answer more so. His grip on my wrist eased fractionally, a predator testing its prey, but escape felt impossible. "I've walked this particular stretch for a good long while, Elias. Longer than you could fathom, and I've observed that people like you, the compassionate ones, the helpers, you're cut from the same cloth underneath." He leaned closer, his breath a chill whisper near my ear. "You all believe you're performing some noble act, yes? Aiding a fellow traveler. But the reality? You do it for the warmth it gives you. The self-congratulatory pat. See what a decent soul I am." A protest died on my lips, choked by rising fear. "But I often ponder," Silas mused, "how decent you'd remain if you knew the particulars. If you knew what became of the others who offered me passage." My blood turned to ice water. "Others? Became of?" "Take the next right turn," Silas directed, gesturing towards a narrow, unpaved track swallowed by darkness. A turn I hadn't registered. Hesitation seized me. My foot hovered above the brake. Here, now. Stop the car, fight, flee. As if sensing the internal calculus, something hard, unmistakably metallic, pressed sharply into my side. "A poor choice, Elias. This little friend has been quite busy already tonight. Let's not add to its workload unnecessarily." Any fragile hope of resistance shattered. With hands that trembled violently, I wrenched the wheel, guiding the car onto the rutted dirt path. Trees clawed at the windows. Skeletal branches scraping metal as we plunged deeper into the oppressive woods. The headlamps sliced weakly into the Stygian gloom ahead. "An observation, Elias," Silas remarked, his tone bizarrely conversational, like old acquaintances on a leisurely drive. Most individuals, upon grasping the gravity of their predicament, they resort to begging, pleading, promises, offers of wealth. "You're different, aren't you?" I swallowed against a constricted throat, striving for composure. "What is it you want?" A chuckle escaped him, hollow and devoid of mirth. What do I want? An excellent query, Elias. A truly profound question. We bumped and jolted along the rough track in silence that stretched taut, likely mere minutes that felt like an eternity. Finally, the trees receded, revealing a small, muddy clearing. Silas gestured. "Stop here. Kill the engine," he instructed. "But leave the lights." My fingers fumbled with the ignition key, the sudden quiet amplifying the relentless tattoo of rain on the car's roof. "Out," Silas commanded softly. The door groaned open. I stepped into the cold, driving rain, instantly soaked. He followed, the gun unwavering. "Walk towards the beams," he ordered. As I complied, the headlights illuminated the reason for this detour, a sight that sent my stomach plummeting. A cavity in the sodden earth, starkly rectangular. A freshly dug grave. "You've connected the dots by now, I imagine," Silas stated, moving to stand beside me at the muddy precipice. "This is the terminus, Elias. Your journey concludes here." I stared into the dark maw, my mind refusing to reconcile the image. A dream, surely. Any second, the terror would dissolve into the familiar contours of my bedroom. But the icy rain, the sucking mud, the insistent pressure of the gun barrel against my spine, it was brutally, undeniably real. "Why?" The word tore from my throat, ragged and faint. "Why are you doing this?" Silas paused, a long contemplative moment. When he spoke again, his voice held a strange, almost melancholy note. "Because someone must, Elias. Someone needs to demonstrate that kindness is a facade, that every supposedly selfless act carries an eventual, hidden cost." He nudged me forward, closer to the edge. My legs felt like water, threatening to buckle. "Any final pronouncements?" Silas inquired. I squeezed my eyes shut. Images flashed, faces loved, words unsaid, futures unlived. Regret surged, hot and bitter, swiftly overtaken by a defiant flare of anger. This was wrong, undeserved. My eyes snapped open. I turned, facing him squarely. "Yes," I said, astonished at the steadiness in my own voice. "Yes, I do." Silas arched an eyebrow, a flicker of what might have been amusement in his pale eyes. "Proceed, then. Let's hear it." I drew a deep, shuddering breath. "I stopped for you because it felt right. Not for cosmic points, not for self-satisfaction. Because a person appeared to need help, and I was able to offer it. If that brands me a fool in your worldview, then let it be so. But it doesn't negate kindness. It makes it vital, more necessary than ever." For a beat, Silas simply regarded me. Then slowly, deliberately, the gun lowered. "You actually believe that?" he murmured, the words tinged with genuine surprise. I nodded, unable to speak further. Silas glanced from the waiting hole back to my face. For the first time, a crack appeared in his certainty, a flicker of doubt in those unsettling eyes. "Perhaps," he began, then cut himself off with a sharp shake of his head. No, it's far too late for such things. He raised the weapon once more. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable. The report never sounded. Instead, a heavy thud. My eyes flew open. Silas lay crumpled on the muddy ground, the gun inert beside him. Looming over him stood a uniformed officer, taser still extended. More vehicles were pulling into the clearing, their flashing blue and red lights slicing violently through the rain and darkness. As they secured Silas, binding his wrists, another officer approached me, his expression concerned. "Sir, are you harmed?" I managed a numb nod. How did you know?" The officer offered a grim smile. "Got a call earlier tonight. Couple you gave a lift to reported a very unsettling hitchhiker matching his description. We've been searching the area." As the surge of adrenaline receded, the crushing weight of the near-fatal encounter descended. My knees gave way, and I sank into the mud, overwhelmed by a volatile cocktail of relief and lingering terror. In the subsequent days, recounting the ordeal, navigating the procedural aftermath, a single thought persistently surfaced. Despite the horror, the decision to stop felt fundamentally unaltered. Because if genuine kindness withered, if compassion became a casualty of fear, then men like Silas would inherit the world. And that was an outcome too bleak to contemplate. It first pricked my awareness while we paused, lungs laboring on a threadbare track of earth deep within the park's untrammeled heart. Late afternoon sun slanted through the canopy, gilding the dust motes dancing in the still air. We were four: myself, Elias, Silas, and Kyle, drawn to this sequestered wilderness by whispers of solitude and vistas worth the pilgrimage. Towering sentinels, the trees pressed close, their foliage a dense tapestry overhead. A desiccated carpet of leaves whispered secrets with every faint sigh of wind, affirming the sense that few boots ever trod this ground. Catching my breath, hands braced on my knees, my gaze drifted upward along the jagged line where forest met sky. And there it was, a point of luminescence, perhaps the size of a golf ball from my vantage, blazing white against the deepening blue. It didn't merely hang. It pulsed, jittered, executing abrupt, tiny shifts like some poorly calibrated automaton. Yet, silence reigned. I strained my ears, desperate for the faintest drone, the barest hum of machinery. Nothing reached me but the frantic rhythm of my own breathing and the scuff of Silas's boots on the packed dirt as he shifted his weight. Wiping a bead of sweat from my brow, I gestured, pointing. Elias narrowed his eyes, suggesting distant aircraft, perhaps a glint off metal wings catching the sun. I doubted it. Its motion felt too deliberate, too aberrant. A dart left, a flicker right, then an unsettling ascent before freezing momentarily, only to twitch elsewhere. Against the immaculate canvas of the sky, its brilliance was absolute, though the dense leaves often veiled it. Only in the gaps did its stark glow punch through. Kyle fumbled for his phone, attempting to capture the anomaly, but the wilderness offered no signal, and his screen displayed only a jittering, indistinct smear of white. He swore softly, dismissing it as nothing, yet the furrow in his brow betrayed a deeper disquiet. A shared current of unease passed between us. This felt wrong. We were miles from any designated overlook, any conceivable human activity. If it was a drone, who piloted it here, shadowing hikers in this remote expanse? We hadn't crossed paths with another soul all day. We pressed onward, the campsite near a promised stream still miles ahead. Our pace found a steady rhythm, but our eyes constantly sought the light whenever the trees permitted. It shadowed us, a silent companion drifting above the arboreal giants to our left. Sometimes it would vanish entirely behind a thick bough, sparking a fleeting hope it was gone, only to reappear moments later, sometimes ahead, sometimes lagging behind. Its speed, coupled with its utter silence, felt impossible. No whir of rotors, no mechanical sigh disturbed the woodland quiet. As the sun bled towards the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, our earlier levity evaporated, replaced by a taut vigilance. Silas would tap my shoulder periodically, a silent indication of its reappearance. Elias, his patience fraying, finally broke the silence, bellowing a defiant, "Hey!" into the dense woods. No reaction. The light continued its elusive ballet, slipping in and out of perception. During its absences, a cold knot formed in my stomach, my throat constricting with a sudden dryness. I half expected it to materialize directly overhead, a sudden, blinding presence. Conversation dwindled to nothing, leaving only the steady crunch of our boots and the rustle of our gear against the deepening quiet. Another hour, perhaps more, brought us to a small natural clearing, a patch of relatively flat earth punctuated by fallen logs. This was our intended haven for the night, the stream murmuring nearby just down a gentle slope. The air cooled rapidly, the sky shifting from orange to a bruised purple. I shrugged off my pack, the release in my shoulders immediate but insufficient to ease the tension coiling within. A swig of water did little for the persistent dryness in my mouth. My eyes swept the tree line. Empty. The others scanned as well, finding nothing. Elias voiced the hope aloud. Perhaps it had been some trick of the lowering sun on metal, now extinguished with the fading light. None of us truly bought it. The thing's movements had possessed an intelligence, a deliberate quality that defied simple explanation. But lacking any better theory, we let the silence stand. Camp setup proceeded with minimal talk. I unfurled my shelter, the familiar actions, driving stakes into the resistant earth, stretching the rainfly taut, arranging my sleeping bag inside, feeling strangely detached, mechanical. Kyle coaxed his small stove to life, the hiss and flare unnaturally loud as he heated tinned rations. Silas remained standing, his gaze relentlessly patrolling the canopy, as if anticipating an aerial descent. Elias fussed with his headlamp, adjusting the strap, his glances darting nervously into the encroaching shadows. True darkness fell, swallowing the clearing whole. We flicked on our lights, their beams carving sharp cones through the black, making the woods feel suddenly claustrophobic, the trees like silent, watching figures drawn closer. The scuttling of unseen creatures in the leaf litter sent jolts through my already frayed nerves. I ate my portion quietly, the food tasteless, my appetite non-existent, replaced by a pervasive apprehension. Looking up, past the skeletal fingers of branches, the stars blazed with an intensity unknown in the light-polluted world back home. A breathtaking, crystalline display. Yet my gaze kept returning to the tree line, expecting that anomalous white spark to reappear amidst the constellations. Only the familiar nocturnal symphony reached me, the chirr of insects, the soft breath of the wind, the rustle of leaves settling in the dark. We spoke in hushed tones. Elias proposed a watch rotation, a measure of security against the unknown. No one argued. The idea offered a sliver of control in a situation that felt utterly beyond it. I volunteered for the first shift, as did Silas and Kyle. It seemed the only way to soothe the collective anxiety that held us captive. Settling onto a log, I switched off my headlamp to conserve power, the flashlight resting heavy in my hand. I listened, attuned to any deviation from the forest's nocturnal rhythm. Perhaps half an hour passed. Then I saw it, the same light. It hung suspended above the trees on the far side of the clearing, unwavering. A chill radiated through my chest, tightening its grip. My fingers clenched around the flashlight. I raised it, sending its beam stabbing towards the hovering point. It remained impassive, bobbing slightly, utterly silent. I moved quickly to Silas's tent, whispering his name urgently. He emerged almost instantly, bleary-eyed but alert, peering out. He spotted the light and froze, the color draining from his face. He roused Elias and Kyle. Soon we stood together, 4 small figures in the vast darkness, our headlamp beams converging uselessly on the distant, enigmatic glow. Words failed us. I felt the fine hairs on my arms prickle, my heart hammering against my ribs, my breath catching shallowly in my throat. The light dipped behind the trees, then impossibly reappeared moments later on the opposite side of the clearing, having seemingly circumnavigated us in utter silence. Kyle tried shouting again, his voice cracking slightly. "Who's there? What do you want?" Silence answered him. We debated using Silas's high-powered torch, kept for emergencies. He retrieved it, its potent beam slicing through the night, momentarily illuminating leaves and branches in stark detail, but failing to reveal the source of the light itself. It seemed to perpetually maintain its distance, lurking just beyond clear definition. After a few tense seconds, it winked out again. Silas muttered a curse. Kyle spat onto the ground, rubbing his arms as if suddenly cold. Our discussion was rapid, hushed. Fleeing into the blackness, risking disorientation and injury, seemed foolhardy despite our growing dread. We possessed trail experience, but not enough to gamble on a nocturnal escape armed only with flashlights. The consensus was clear. Wait for dawn. Pack swiftly and retreat down the path we knew. Staying another night under this silent scrutiny was unthinkable. The tension was a physical presence, suffocating. We lingered a while longer, sweeping our beams across the dark perimeter, hoping, perhaps dreading, its return. It did not reappear. Exhaustion eventually overruled fear. We agreed to return to our tents, maintaining the watch rota. Inside my sleeping bag, lying rigid on my back, sleep felt impossibly remote. My mind relentlessly replayed the image of that luminous point, its swiftness, its silence, its unnerving proximity. I rubbed tired eyes, consciously trying to slow my breathing. Eventually, frayed nerves succumbed, and I drifted into a shallow, uneasy doze. I awoke abruptly to Silas shaking my shoulder. The pre-dawn chill hung heavy in the air. It must have been 3 or 4 in the morning. He'd seen it again, he whispered. I scrambled out, rubbing sleep from my eyes, stumbling into the cold. He pointed towards the trees. I saw only darkness, interwoven branches stark against the faintest hint of approaching dawn. He swore it had been there, circling the clearing. I didn't doubt him. We waited, our lights probing the shadows, revealing only familiar bark and leaves. After a while, the cold and fatigue drove me back inside. Silas remained outside a little longer before finally retreating to his own tent. The pale light of morning roused me. My back protested with stiffness as I crawled out. Kyle was already coaxing the stove, boiling water for coffee, his eyes red-rimmed with fatigue. Elias sat slumped on a log, raking a hand through his disheveled hair. Silas was methodically rolling his sleeping pad. The unspoken consensus hung thick in the air. Get out. Now. I forced down a dry energy bar and choked down some bitter coffee, grateful only for the warmth. We broke camp with grim efficiency. In the daylight, the forest seemed almost mundane. Just trees, earth, leaves, sunlight filtering through the canopy. No trace of the anomalous visitor remained. We retraced our steps, the narrow path winding back through the dense woods. Our boots fell into a steady, thudding rhythm against dirt and stone. We tried to maintain vigilance, scanning the treetops, but the canopy revealed nothing untoward. I focused on the mechanics of breathing, the forward motion of my legs, pushing away the lingering dread. Escape was the only goal. Sweat trickled beneath my pack straps. A dull ache settled deep in my thighs. Conversation was sparse, fractured. Now and then Elias would cast a quick glance over his shoulder. Silas's gaze remained mostly upward, hand shielding his eyes. We walked for hours, the intended pleasure of the hike replaced by a grim determination to simply be clear of this place. My shirt clung damply to my back. My socks felt sodden. The air, thick with the scent of pine and loam, felt heavy. Silence, broken only by our footfalls and the occasional startled cry of a bird, pressed in. I avoided thought, counting steps, focusing solely on the path ahead. Around midday, we halted where the trail broadened slightly, consulting our maps. Several hours still separated us from the ranger station and the sanctuary of our vehicle. We chewed jerky and drank water, though my throat remained parched, appetite still absent. I forced myself to swallow. Cale's eyes, like mine, continued their restless patrol of the trees. The sunlight was bright now, almost harsh. Nothing resembling a hovering light disturbed the blue expanse above. A part of me began to wonder if it would reappear in the full light of day. A thought accompanied by both a desperate hope it wouldn't and a gnawing anxiety about when it might. We resumed walking. Perhaps an hour later, a flicker of intense brightness off to our right snagged my peripheral vision. I stopped dead, staring. The others halted too, sensing the shift. It was back, poised just above a distant ridge, winking in and out of view as if deliberately playing hide-and-seek among the branches. My pulse leapt, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. Sweat slicked my palms. The tension across my shoulders became an almost physical weight. I didn't speak, merely pointed. They saw it. Elias breathed a curse, low and vehement. Silas's jaw muscles bunched. Kyle shook his head, raising his phone once more in a futile gesture, capturing only that familiar, unsteady speck. We stood rooted, uncertain. It made no move towards us, simply maintained its position, pacing us, always parallel to the trail. When we started walking again, it moved in concert, always keeping itself partially obscured, just beyond definitive sight. I tried a brief, experimental jog. It matched my pace effortlessly. I slowed. It slowed. The sensation of being under intense, dispassionate observation was overwhelming. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I licked my lips, tasting salt. Readjusting my pack straps, I tried to force my gaze forward, to ignore the silent watcher. After some indeterminate time, it vanished once more. We kept moving, each step feeling heavier than the last. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. I noticed Silas's hands were balled into fists at his sides. Elias kept shaking his head almost imperceptibly. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck compulsively, leaving angry red marks on his skin. My focus narrowed entirely to escape. The hours crawled by. The forest scenery remained largely unchanged, yet subtle shifts hinted we were nearing the edge. Finally, the trees began to thin. We recognized a bend in the trail, a familiar signpost glimpsed the day before. A weathered wooden bench and a small trash receptacle marked our proximity, perhaps half an hour from the ranger station. The afternoon sun felt warm on my neck. I risked one final look back into the receding woods. Nothing. The light was gone, completely vanished. Relief washed over me, potent but incomplete. I craved walls, doors, the mundane presence of other people. We emerged into the clearing of the ranger station in the late afternoon, walking directly, wordlessly, to the gravel lot where our car waited. Elias unlocked it, the click echoing loudly in the sudden quiet. We piled in, the slam of car doors sealing us inside. No one spoke of what we had witnessed. The shared, unspoken need was simply to leave that place, that experience, behind us. As the engine caught and we pulled away, I felt the tension begin to seep out of my muscles, but my mind remained captive, replaying the silent, hovering enigma. Had others seen it? Would they believe us? We never filed a report. The thought of facing the questions, the inevitable skepticism of trying to articulate something so profoundly inexplicable, was too much. We just drove home. In the days that followed, brief text messages passed between us, acknowledging the shared ordeal without delving into specifics. An unspoken pact of silence seemed to settle. But the memory remains indelible. The parched throat, the hammering heart, the cold sweat tracing my spine as I looked up and saw that thing pacing us through the silent trees. It's not a memory I cherish. It's not an encounter I ever wish to repeat.